you completely believe the kind of like monster era of Lady Gaga, and you completely believe when she does the duets with Tony Bennett, and you completely believe when she does the soundtrack for Star is Born, right? And the production's all over the place, and it's all these kinds of things. But she has found a way, both within her own voice and within who she chooses to collaborate, to make songs that she can be authentic, you know, and that's, again, testament to her. She has all those gears. She's a Berkeley kid. She legitimately loved jazz music. She's a legitimate singer. She legitimately loves pop and pop production, and you know, so it's like, again, big credit to her. But I think, if we get back to the kind of the artistic part of like, well, what's going to be a successful release for you, or what's going to be a song that people resonate with, or that we say moves the needle. I think at the end of the day, the average listener is going to be compelled by something that they feel like is authentic, and that's not chasing, and that's not pandering, and that they feel like was done with intention, you know. And look, there's always going to be an exception.
Sure.
Like, we will have the Macarenas and the Who Let the Dogs Out, but those are exceptions to the rule. And so if you're looking to kind of bat the average, I think you chase authenticity, you know, because that's the part that I feel like is relatively recreatable. Those kind of cultural moments that just, those things that just happen, you can't do anything about that. That's just like, man, why did this happen? Who knows?
Yeah.
But it happened. You know, this, man,
so interesting, man.
Last thing I'll use, there's a guy in
Please.
town. There's a guy in town, Walker Hayes. It's a country artist. And he's been here for years and has been making great music. And I've worked on great music with him for years, and just a great dude, and like making cool shit. And it was the Applebee's song that blew him up out of nowhere. And like, no one saw it coming. His own record label didn't see it coming. Nothing. That was a cultural moment. And it's unrealistic to think that Walker can then go in and just recreate the Applebee's thing over and over, right? But what is believable, or what feels like can be done, is him continually recreating the music that he's made for a long time, which is authentic. And hopefully now that will bring an audience to him that can take that music and accept that, you know. But it's not realistic to think he can just go in and keep churning out those. That song is actually called Fancy Like, by the way. But yeah, you know, it's he's not going to go write those every day. And then what happened to it out in the universe isn't going to happen every day either. So
that very, very, very interesting point you made. And I've asked a lot of people this question, and I get typically three answers. One is authenticity. Two is specificity. And three is vulnerability. But I've always been, I think you probably explained the authenticity the best out of everybody so far, because a lot of people pair authenticity with vulnerability. And I'm like, I struggle with that to some degree, because I'm like, so does that mean that like every song you have to bare your soul kind of thing?
Right.
And like, but then you look at 24 Karat and he's not baring it, but you explained it super well. It's just authentic to him, whether he's talking about picking daisies in the yard or whether he's talking about burying his mom, they're authentic to him. Absolutely. And that is super fascinating. Lady Gaga, again, authentic to her, you know. She's not, or you said chasing, they're not chasing, they're not pandering. That was a very, very, very interesting explanation of authenticity, I think. Well, I really appreciate that.
Well, I think too, the kind of sidebar conversation to that is, anyone that's pretty talented can hear what's happening currently on the radio and then go make a sound alike. It's the era of Splice and sample packs and all this stuff. And it's like, you know, I can use the same cashmere snaps that I heard on this Selena Gomez record and put it on, you know, and you can do a pretty, a pretty convincing fake. And that's to a certain degree, that's the part I kind of think about is like pandering.
Sure.
And I think what you have to kind of remind yourself of is like, well, yeah, we want to be aware of what's happening culturally, but it doesn't mean that like that's the only avenue to success here. And in fact, I think when you go back and you look at some of the biggest hits that we've seen in our industry, they come out in a time where they are very contrast to everything else that's happening on the radio at the time. And then of course you immediately have some chasers that don't quite thing, but then it levels out, and then suddenly it's just kind of like, oh, well, this is another acceptable path to hit music, right? So I think that's the kind of stuff you always have to kind of be considerate of and be thoughtful of. And